The alarming reality of mental decline. Imagine suddenly being unable to recall the name of someone you spoke with just yesterday, or forgetting why you entered a room. You increasingly find yourself losing the thread of conversations and forgetting simple things. You think to yourself, this is just age catching up with me. But what if it's not age at all? What if you are day by day, unconsciously switching off your own mind? My mother, a strong woman with a once razor-sharp intellect, began complaining that her memory was failing her. She diligently took vitamins, solved crossword puzzles, and listened to lectures about aging, yet nothing helped. That is, until I discovered a book written by a British neuropsychologist named Dr. Marcus Harrington. He asserted something revolutionary. Memory doesn't age, it hibernates, and most critically, it can be awakened. The tragedy isn't that people lose their memory. Dr. Harrington once told a packed auditorium at Cambridge University, the real tragedy is that they accept this loss as inevitable fate. They surrender their memories, their sense of self, without putting up the slightest resistance. If you don't want to become one of these people, continue reading. This article could become a turning point in your cognitive journey. The Conscious Cognition Institute was established precisely for such conscious transformations. Your engagement helps us create more content that genuinely awakens the mind. The deception we've been conditioned to accept since childhood. We've been indoctrinated with the belief that the brain inevitably weakens with age. We prepare ourselves for mental deterioration as if it were an intrinsic part of aging. But what if this is a lie? What if the cause lies not in the passing years, but in how we live? An elderly professor I once conversed with on a train shared a thought that etched itself into my memory. I haven't forgotten how to think, I simply haven't tried for too long. This simple insight captures the essence of the problem. Our brains don't break down, they become dormant. Like a musical instrument gathering dust in the corner. The melody is still there, we need only begin playing again. Dr. Harrington believed the brain can change at any age, but only if we don't confine it within the cage of monotony. The mind, he wrote in his groundbreaking work of Neural Pathways of Consciousness, retreats into hibernation when life becomes predictable. When each day mirrors the previous, each route becomes familiar, each thought repetitive. People mistakenly believe age causes cognitive decline, explains Dr. Elizabeth Chen, Director of Neuroscience at Pacific Medical Institute. The research actually suggests it's the opposite. Cognitive decline is predominantly caused by lifestyle factors that become more common as we age. The great news is that these factors are largely within our control, but something even more frightening lurks beneath this misconception. Most people haven't merely believed the myth of brain aging. They've begun living in accordance with it. They've stopped setting challenges for themselves, stopped learning, stopped experiencing wonder. And at that precise moment, their memory begins to fade. Why isn't this discussed more openly? Why do we continue seeking vitamins and pills instead of facing the truth? Because the truth is both more dangerous and far simpler. We are killing our own memory through our daily habits. The hidden enemies of memory. Many people believe that preserving memory requires nothing more than reading regularly, eating nuts, and solving crossword puzzles. But these are merely superficial measures. They don't address what truly deteriorates the brain slowly, imperceptibly, day after day. These enemies don't present themselves as medical diagnoses, but their consequences are no less devastating. Dr. Harrington called them the silent assassins of memory. And here's why. The first assassin: posture and breathing. Imagine your brain as a tree and your blood as its water. When you remain slumped over for hours, immobile with your head bowed, you essentially cut off the roots' access to water. Oxygen doesn't fully circulate, neurons begin to hibernate, and you barely notice as your attention scatters, and simple thoughts slip away like smoke. The relationship between posture, breathing, and cognitive function is profound yet largely ignored in conventional medicine, explains Dr. Jonathan Fields, a neurophysiologist at Northwestern University. Blood flow to the brain decreases by up to 30% with poor posture, particularly when the head is tilted forward. For extended periods, a position many maintain while using smartphones and computers. I witnessed this transformation firsthand. A 60-year-old executive came to our clinic complaining of forgetfulness. Instead of medication, we suggested he change his physical position every 30 minutes, practice deep breathing, and stretch upward throughout the day. 2 weeks later, he reported, "For the first time in a year, I feel clarity in my mind. I spent 40 years hunched over legal documents." He told me during his follow-up appointment, "No one ever mentioned this might be affecting my thinking. The difference is remarkable. It's as though someone cleaned windows I didn't even realize were dirty." The second assassin: monotony. You'd be surprised how inherently lazy the brain can be. Day after day, it receives identical signals and simply switches off the excess. Both body and psyche operate this way. When everything is predictable, the brain stops learning. And if it doesn't learn, It begins to wither like muscles without exercise. Dr. Harrington's research showed that subjects who followed identical daily routines for just 3 weeks demonstrated measurable declines in cognitive testing compared to those who introduced novel elements into their routines. The brain craves novelty, he wrote. Without it, neural pathways begin to atrophy from disuse. Think of your daily routine as a path through the forest, explains cognitive psychologist Dr. Rachel Winters. When you walk the same path every day, it becomes so familiar you stop noticing details. Your brain operates on autopilot. But venture onto a new trail, and suddenly you're alert, attentive, processing multiple inputs simultaneously. This state of heightened awareness is when the brain truly thrives. The third assassin, information overload. And stress, this is particularly dangerous because people rarely recognize it. Constant background tension, phones ringing, news flashing, thoughts jumping overloads the brain. It no longer distinguishes between important and secondary information, expending energy not on memory formation but on mere survival. This explains why even young people complain about mental fog. I once asked an elderly woman who complained about memory loss, "How many times a day do you simply breathe in silence?" She pondered this. "Not once. Why would I?" And therein lies the problem. Recent research from Stanford University's Stress and Neuroplasticity Laboratory confirms this relationship. In their 2022 study, participants who engaged in just 12 minutes of focused breathing daily for 8 weeks showed significant improvements in working memory and attention span compared to the control group. Dr. Marcus Harrington, the forgotten master of mental rejuvenation. Let's delve into the remarkable life story of a man who proved the brain can be awakened at any age. Born a frail child in London's post-war era, doctors doubted Marcus Harrington would reach adulthood. Illness, weakness, limitations, everything from his childhood told him, "You won't survive." But Marcus not only survived, he became a symbol of inner strength. Neither a traditional physician nor a monk nor a scientist in the conventional sense. He was an engineer of body and mind, and he proved that humans can reconstruct themselves when they begin living consciously. "My childhood illness was my greatest teacher," he often told his students. "When you're confined to bed for months as a child, watching other children play outside your window, you develop an almost desperate appreciation for how the mind works. My body couldn't run, but my thoughts could fly." In his youth, he witnessed how his loved ones suffered, not only from physical ailments but from the extinction of spirit, people losing interest in life, energy, and clarity of thought. He refused to accept this as normal, and began studying ancient Eastern and modern Western approaches to health. Everything he discovered, he tested on himself. For years, he refined a system that might be called activation from without but requires awakening from within. This awakening begins not with pills or medicines, but with understanding how you live. If you want to preserve memory, Dr. Harrington asserted, begin with posture, with movement, with breathing, with disconnecting from the unnecessary. Only then can you activate what's most important, consciousness. He didn't teach techniques for memorizing lists. He didn't offer memory exercises. Instead, he created conditions in which the brain naturally returns to life. His approach was deeper, addressing energy channels, body conditions, and the fullness of breath. He could view a person holistically and recognized memory decline as a signal that someone had stopped developing. In one of his works, he wrote, "Memory doesn't die, it merely retreats into shadow when a person's soul ceases to strive for the new." His method wasn't a system of control, but a system of awakening. I've read accounts from his students. One elderly man described how, at 68, he learned a new language following Dr. Harrington's techniques. Another recalled how, after years of depression, he began painting and remembering his dreams. They didn't become geniuses, but they regained the clarity they had already buried. This isn't magic, Dr. Harrington would insist during his lectures at Oxford. It's an internal choice to live differently. 7 days to mental rebirth, the Harrington Protocol, not months, not years, just 7 days to feel your brain reawakening. Dr. Harrington firmly believed that given the right conditions, memory activates quickly. What's needed is to do one simple but non-standard thing every day. By the third day, most people notice their thoughts becoming clearer, their attention sharper, their energy purer. Day 1 of breaking routine, creating cognitive chaos. Dr. Harrington called this creating beneficial chaos. Brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Put on your shoes in reverse order. Take a new route to the store. This is equivalent to turning on lights in a room long abandoned. The brain begins scanning what's happening with heightened attention, and memory comes alive. The principle behind this is called neurological cross-training. Explains neurologist Dr. Michael Brahms. Using your non-dominant hand activates the opposite hemisphere of your brain and creates new neural pathways. It's surprisingly effective at increasing overall brain activity. Try this, set 5 alarms throughout your day. When each one sounds, stop whatever you're doing and perform a simple task with your non-dominant hand for just 30 seconds. Write your name, button a shirt, or brush your hair. The brief interruption combined with the novel motor challenge creates what neuroscientists call a pattern interrupt, essentially rebooting your attentional system. Day 2. Attention to detail. Did you notice the color of the wallpaper at the pharmacy today? Which hand gave you your change? What was sitting on the counter beside the cashier? Observation is key. One retired friend of mine began playing a game. Each day he memorized 5 new objects in familiar places. After a month, he started remembering where he'd left his keys for the first time in many years. The modern world has trained us to scan rather than see, to glance rather than observe. Dr. Harrington wrote, "This habitual inattention is cognitive poison. Try this expanded exercise. Choose a room in your home and set a timer for 2 minutes. Close your eyes and list everything you can remember about the room: colors, objects, their positions. Then open your eyes and notice what you missed. Repeat this in different environments: at work, in a cafe, on public transportation. Within days, you'll find yourself automatically registering details you previously overlooked." Day 3. Return to the past. Recall one day from childhood in detail. Where were you? What were you wearing? What smell surrounded you? Perhaps you were sitting in your grandmother's summer kitchen, hearing the click of the gas stove, or remembering the scent of new school notebooks in early September. This exercise activates ancient neural connections. It doesn't merely train memory. It gives you the feeling of, I exist. This is more powerful than it seems. Autobiographical memory exercises are particularly effective because they engage multiple brain regions simultaneously, explains neuroscientist Dr. Sandra Martinez. 1. You recall sensory details from your past: smells, sounds, textures. You're activating not just the hippocampus, the memory center, but also sensory cortices, emotional centers, and areas responsible for sense of self. It's whole brain engagement. Enhance this practice by creating a memory chain. Select a significant year from your past and recall one specific memory from each month, focusing on different sensory aspects for each. For January, focus on visual details. For February, sounds. For March, smells, and so on. This progressive approach builds what neuropsychologists call memory scaffolding, a structured framework that strengthens recall abilities across different cognitive domains. Day 4. Bodywork. Simple movements requiring coordination. Draw different shapes with both hands simultaneously. Walk around the room pronouncing words backward. This is challenging, and therein lies its power. The brain engages because the task is unfamiliar. It cannot operate on autopilot, and in this moment it awakens. Physical movement directly impacts cognitive function in ways we're only beginning to fully understand, notes Dr. Eliza Thompson, a kinesiology researcher specializing in brain-body connections. Cross-body movements require communication between the brain's hemispheres, essentially forcing the creation of new neural pathways. Expand this practice with cognitive motor integration exercises. True while walking in place, count backward from 100 by 7s. Or try simultaneously patting your head with one hand while rubbing your stomach with the other, then switch after 30 seconds. These seemingly simple tasks require significant neural coordination and activate multiple brain regions simultaneously. Day 5. Information fasting. The brain needs hunger. Informational hunger. Turn off the television. Leave your phone in another room. Spend the day in silence or in nature. No news, no feeds, just you breathing space. In such moments, the brain isn't resting. It's rebooting, structuring information, clearing the internal memory space. Information consumption has the same impact on cognition that food has on the body, Dr. Harrington often explained. Just as periodic fasting helps the digestive system reset information, fasting allows the cognitive system to process what it's already consumed rather than continuously digesting new inputs. Modern research supports this concept. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience found that participants who underwent a 24-hour digital detox showed improved performance on working memory tasks and reported greater mental clarity. Try taking this further with a sensory reset. Spend 30 minutes in a completely darkened room with no sounds. Allow your brain to process without external stimuli. Many practitioners report profound insights and clarity following such periods of sensory reduction. Day 6. New knowledge. This could be a word in a foreign language, a new recipe, or a dance move. What matters is that it's completely novel. Dr. Harrington maintained that a brain given new information responds with clarity, and this works as soon as you begin. You reclaim the youthful vigor of thought. Learning something new creates a cascade of neurochemicals, including dopamine and norepinephrine, that enhance attention and memory formation, explains neurochemist Dr. James Richardson. It's like hitting a refresh button for your brain's processing systems. Enhance this by engaging in stacked learning. Learn something new that combines multiple skills. For example, instead of just memorizing a foreign word, learn to both write it in calligraphy and use it in a sentence, or learn a new recipe from a different culture, researching its historical significance while preparing it. This multidimensional approach creates richer neural connections than single-focus learning. Day 7. Complete rest, full rest without screens before sleep, without discussing problems, without mental strain. This isn't just sleep, it's a consolidation phase. During sleep, the brain doesn't rest, it processes, sorts, and strengthens. Without this time, memory collapses like a house of cards. Sleep is perhaps the most underappreciated cognitive enhancer available to us. Dr. Harrington wrote in his final work, during deep sleep stages, the brain performs crucial memory consolidation processes that cannot occur during wakefulness. Recent research from the Sleep and Cognition Laboratory at UC Berkeley confirms this, showing that specific sleep waves during deep sleep are directly correlated with memory retention. Their studies demonstrate that quality sleep can improve factual recall by up to 40% compared to equivalent periods of wakefulness. To maximize this benefit, develop what sleep researchers call sleep hygiene rituals. True 30 minutes before bed. Write down 3 things you learned today and 3 questions you have about tomorrow. This practice helps the brain identify what to process during sleep cycles. Then engage in progressive muscle relaxation, tensing and releasing each muscle group from feet to head, which signals to your nervous system that it's safe to enter deep sleep states. Why most people never start these practices are simple, yet they work because they aren't exercises for the brain, but a new logic of life, a logic in which the brain doesn't forget but lives. Strangely, most people will never try even the first day. If you've read this far and already feel something responding within you, consider which of these 7 days you'll begin tomorrow. The unsettling truth is that even knowing this information, most people won't change. They'll continue living on autopilot, complaining about forgetfulness, blaming age, buying vitamins, and hoping things will somehow improve on their own. But nothing will change because waiting for improvement is easier than taking action, and habit is stronger than reason. I remember a woman I met at a seminar. She was around 70, with lively eyes but a tired voice. I understand everything, she said. I even wrote down all your suggestions. But I'm afraid to start. What if it doesn't work? This fear paralyzes. It's unnoticeable but dangerous because it steals our chance for something better. People fear not only the new, they fear being disappointed in themselves, fear admitting they've wasted years, fear seeing how much energy they've devoted to emptiness. But do you know what's truly frightening? Not giving yourself a chance. Because then memory will indeed begin to fade, not because that's how age works, but because you're no longer creating anything new within yourself. The greatest tragedy I've witnessed, Dr. Harrington once told a reporter from The Guardian, isn't cognitive decline itself, but watching people abandon their own minds. Without a fight, they accept diminishment as inevitable when the tools for renewal are within arm's reach. Most don't believe the brain can be awakened. They say, it's too late for me. I'm not that kind of person. I don't have time. But this isn't true. There's one simple law. The brain is ready for change. It just needs a signal. I've met people who restored mental clarity in their 80s. And I've seen those who lost themselves by 50. The difference between them isn't biological, it's their choice. Now you know more than 95% of people. The only question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Beyond memory, the awakened life memory is merely the tip of the iceberg. When the brain awakens, it's not just the ability to remember that revives, clarity returns. Energy returns, the ability to sense meaning returns. I recall a man who came to me after severe burnout. He had once been an engineer, solving complex problems and managing projects, but now couldn't concentrate even when reading instructions. I don't recognize myself anymore, he said. We began with simple things, breathing, movement, conscious habits. A couple of weeks later, he called and exclaimed, I've started thinking again, not just remembering, but thinking. I can contemplate things as I used to. This isn't miraculous, it's a return to self. We activate the entire internal mechanism. We perceive people better sense where we truly want to be and what we should let go of. Intuition improves, anxiety decreases. We stop living on the edge and begin living from within. Dr. Harrington said, one energy flows freely, the mind works clearly. These aren't empty words. When one part awakens, everything else begins to move. That's why many who started with simple techniques later spoke not only of better memory but of new sensations in life. Some left toxic jobs, others restored relationships that seemed broken, and some woke up in the morning with a sense of joy for the first time in many years. Awakening the brain isn't just a way to remember better. It's a way to return to a vital state where each day feels part of something greater, where even small things fill with meaning, where you don't just remember who you were, but clearly see who you can still become. The awakened mind doesn't just recall the past more effectively, wrote Dr. Harrington in his personal journals, discovered after his death. It experiences the present more fully and anticipates the future more creatively. This is cognitive living rather than cognitive aging. The most important message, many people think throughout their lives that memory is something fixed, like eye color or height, that it inevitably fades with age, that nothing can be done. But this isn't true. Memory isn't a static organ. It's alive, responding to how you live, what you think about, what you allow to occupy your attention, and most importantly, it can return. But this requires taking a step, not waiting, not hoping, not postponing until later, but simply beginning, even with one simple action, a different route, conscious breathing, silence for one evening. Sometimes these small details unlock a strength inside us we didn't know existed. Understanding how posture affects memory, how stress blocks oxygen to the brain, how new challenges awaken old neural connections. All this isn't theory. It's a path accessible to anyone ready to stop living in survival mode and begin living in conscious awakening. Remember, your memory isn't the past. It's your tool for the future. It's your ability to maintain wholeness. If you lose it, you lose yourself. Dr. Marcus Harrington left us with perhaps his most profound insight in his final public lecture at King's College. We speak of memory as though it's about the past, but its true purpose is to inform our future. When we surrender our capacity to remember, we surrender our capacity to become. And that, I believe, is the most tragic loss of all. If you're still reading and feel this article has touched something essential within you, which of these methods will you begin applying today? The journey to cognitive clarity begins with a single, conscious choice. Thank you for choosing awareness. Memory is just the first step. We'll go deeper from here.